Hello and welcome to Shought Thorts, the bite-sized interview show where I ask your favorite people in the gaming industry a bunch of somewhat silly questions. My name's DC Bradshaw, and my guest today is Tanya, also known as Cypher of Tyr. Thanks for joining me.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. All right, here we go then. Question one. For those who don't know you, could you please describe the creative thing or things you do, but only using words of one syllable?
Oh boy. Stream, write, dice, talk, swear. Everything else I can think of is multiple syllables. I thought about collaborate, but that's clearly more than one syllable.
It's just a smidge more than one, I'm not going to lie.
That's all I can think of. For someone who's a writer, I am struggling for one syllable words.
It is the classic thing. Under pressure, the lexicon goes out the window, and then...
Oh yeah.
But I think you got a pretty good list there. A pretty good list. If you were a pirate captain, what would be the name of your ship?
Ooh. The SS Spite.
Okay, okay.
Because I say often that I run on spite and caffeine.
Hmm.
And the reason I am where I am now is because I was angry and it was fueled by spite.
There we go. A perfect reason. And yeah, I think it's I think intimidating enough for a pirate ship name. I think people would beware.
Yeah, also to be transparent, I'm full on in Dragon Age Veilguard brain rot. So also a slight homage to Lucanus and Spite.
Yeah, I was wondering that. I thought, no, it won't be the main reason why she's gone with this, but no, I think it's a good added kicker because, yeah, great character. Okay, question three. What's your favorite just mindless fun popcorn movie?
Ooh, that's a good question because I'm trying to think of the last kind of mindless movie that I watched. Probably any of the MCU movies.
Yeah, I think for the most part they do really fall into that category. Some are a little bit more intellectually taxing, but no, to be honest, they're popcorn movies through and through.
Oh yeah. Especially the very first ones where it's like, this is just fun. This is heroes doing their thing, you know.
Hmm.
And I'm the nerd that after I've watched the popcorn movie goes, but what about this, this, and this? And I go, wait, I'm overthinking this. I need to stop.
They definitely go through waves of popcorn to, oh, we're going to try and do too many clever things, and it's
Yep.
like, no, no, you've lost the magic. Come on, bring it back,
Yep.
bring it back. There we go. There's the sweet spot, and
Yep.
up and down. If you could have a miniature version of a mythological or fantasy creature as a pet, what would it be?
Ooh, I'm torn between Cerberus
Hmm.
and Tiamat.
Okay. Okay. I'm sensing a theme with the pair of them. It's like, how many heads do you want on your pet?
I mean, with Cerberus, I get three puppy heads to pet if I have a tiny Cerberus.
Yeah.
And Tiamat could, like an apartment-sized Tiamat could guard the place. But also, if it's a tiny Tiamat, I think I could corral it and make sure that it doesn't burn anything down.
All the various other breaths that come out of that. Yeah.
But then I could just like, have it at the door if anyone gets cheeky or if anything gets weird. They could just guard one door while I leave out the other door.
I like that. I like that. Quite a few people have gone with that kind of slightly obvious answer of like a baby dragon, which I will not fault them for it. It's an amazing answer. But baby Tiamat, you get baby dragon, and even more so. So I like it.
Oh yeah.
All right, question five then. What's your favorite swear word or phrase that's not actually swearing?
I love this because people never know what to do with it, but you leached walnut.
Okay. I mean,
So I actually had to explain this in a like social call the other day
mhm.
because like we were trying to think about ways in which to swear but not swear because some people have little humans around, etc.
Yeah.
And I was like, for me, it means you buffoon, you fool, and it's a way to say that because it's also in the tone of voice in which you say it, or tone doesn't work over text. But if I get to verbally say it, you will know exactly how much scorn and contempt I have for you.
The English language, and to be honest, I imagine most languages are very good at it, but the English language is great for it. It is exactly tone. You don't have to use certain words because if you say it the right way, unquestionably, they will get exactly what you mean.
Yep.
Either how frustrated you are or how much they despise what you just did.
Yeah, I mean, like the phrase "bless your heart." There's so many ways you can put that out in the world. It's like, oh, bless your heart. Like, oh, you fool.
Love it. Love it. Question six. If you could see any artist, living or dead, performing live during their prime, who would it be?
Prince, no doubt. I never got to see him live.
That's a really good shout. Really good. Any particular Prince songs that you're, or just like the whole catalog is your jam?
I would love to see a lot of his catalog, but mostly Purple Rain because that movie meant a lot to me. And not to get like morbid or super serious, but
Mhm.
it for Prince, I will always have the kind of where were you when you found out he died?
Mm,
And I had just gotten off the plane going to PAX East. And the waiting for your luggage, kind of scrolling through my phone on the bird site before it was horrible.
yeah,
And I started seeing all these things. And someone actually DM'd me of like, if you see this, close Twitter, don't look. Because they knew that Prince meant a lot to me.
yeah.
And I was like, oh. So I'm just there in the airport, clutching my phone, waiting for my luggage. And it was like, nah, this can't be real. And of course it was real, but it's just one of those things of like Prince was so formative for me.
And it's an odd one that, I mean, inevitably you remember the very, very specific things of, some artists in particular that you were really a fan of, or something was happening at the time where it just the confluence of events. And of course, there's the horrible thing, and I think people maybe are getting better at it. The not announcing deaths while people are streaming, but some people are still
Oh,
absolutely horrendous at it because
yeah. I've got a rule in my stream about that, and one of my friends actually made a rule about it after someone came in and announced that Chadwick Boseman had passed. And he's kind of like for me and Prince,
yeah.
Chadwick Boseman meant a lot to him, and it just wrecked his whole day.
I think, I mean, time zones here. I think it was yeah, it must have been very late in the evening. I think I was just going to bed and doing that terrible thing of I'm going to bed,
Yep.
and then you scroll and you scroll and you scroll. Well, yeah, which is terrible,
Oh yeah.
before you wakes you back up. But I think then it was like, what was this? But obviously, in your time, yeah, perfect streaming time in theory.
Yeah. So it was one of those, oh, well, I guess there's my heart on the floor, with how much Chadwick Boseman meant, and Black Panther, and whew, yeah, it was a lot.
Question 7. If you could have a magical item to make your day-to-day life just a little bit easier, what would it be?
Prestidigitation as a spell that I could do at will,
Mm-hmm.
because as I'm sure you and anyone else watching, we feel the grind of I just cleaned up, I just did laundry, I just did dishes, and now they're dirty again.
Mm-hmm.
I have to wash dishes again. I have to keep cooking. Like food is such a chore.
Yeah.
I just like to be able to wave my hands and have things magically like tidied away, laundry clean and put away. That would make my life so much easier.
Yeah, no, I can't deny anything you just said there. It is one of these great things, as a child, it's inevitable. It's, oh, if you could have a superpower, what would it be? People think grandiose, oh, if you could fly, if you had
Yep.
super strength, if you could change shape or teleport. Admittedly, teleporting would be just amazing.
Yep.
But, for the daily grind, it's like, just no mess. Just, no, everything is too much. Just deal with that.
Yep. Absolutely. I'm trying to think for an actual item. If I could have like an item or a focus to basically get me from point A to point B, but I fear that would make me more sedentary than I already am.
I would almost want something that had a caveat on it of some sort. It's like I can use it, but you've got to be able to move at least a certain distance. So I can use it for, okay, I don't want to have to, take a couple of trains to get into the office or something. Or, classic example, I can go to like a convention anywhere in the world. I don't have to worry about travel and hotels. But yeah, if it was just a to the fridge, back to the sofa,
Yeah.
I think that's a slippery slope.
Oh yeah. What was it from Wall-E? We would be the people just in their little floating pods,
Yeah.
which I have feelings about that and but that is not appropriate for this segment because I would have to swear.
Thank you very much for resisting.
You're welcome.
What's a book that you think everyone should read?
Gail Simone's Red Sonja.
Nice. I have not had a chance to read it yet, but
It's new-ish. It's only been out a couple months.
Mhm.
But Gail brings everything that she's put into the comics with that, and she's just such a phenomenal writer.
Yeah.
In person, it just comes through in her work.
Is it her first novel? I mean, obviously she's written so many
Mhm.
comics and graphic novels, but first for
It is her first novel.
wonderful. And it's nice that it's something that she is so well known for. Definitely have to read that. I'll add it to the list. I will add it to the list.
The TBR grows.
Oh, it really does. I'm terrible. I'm terrible at reading books at the best of times. It's one of those that when I was younger, inevitably I would, if it was something I really wanted to read, I would just read it. Just read it kind of almost cover to cover with occasional
Mhm.
breaks for, sustaining myself. Then it became like, well, I'll read for like half an hour before bed to wind down, and then dreaded phones and stuff like that. And also just general exhaustion.
Yep.
I mean, day job and I have a tiny person. So then I need to actually wind down from the whole day. And by the time I'm actually in bed, it's like, I just need to sleep. I just need to sleep. Brain cannot handle anymore.
Yeah.
So my backlog of books is so long.
Yeah, and I've done the thing where I will read on my phone,
Hmm.
and on the one hand, at least I'm reading, but on the other, I'm still on an electronic device in the evening.
Yeah, yeah, that's a dangerous one. I think my best sweet spot was when I had an hour's commute every day, but it was a train. So I could either be reading a book or listening to an audiobook, and I could do a goodly chunk of story rather than, stop, go, stop, go, stop, go. That was all right. I mean, admittedly, I didn't like losing 2 hours every day to my commute, but at least it was relatively entertaining. Okay, this could be a tricky one. Question 9. What's the creative thing you've made or done that you're most proud of?
I'm guessing you're going to assume one thing, but I might surprise you.
Please do.
Actually being involved with Rivals of Waterdeep, because shout out to Greg Tito, formerly of WotC, who reached out and wanted to take a chance on the stream show with relatively unknown people. And despite what people think, the goal was not to have a show of all people of color. It just kind of fell out that way in the cards and who was asked to join. But we created something fun, created something different. And through the course and happy accident of us being all people of color, we showed other folks that yes, D&D is for them. Yes, anyone can learn to play. You too can DM. You too can stream your show. And over the 5 years that we did the show, the cast came and went. We got a chance to perform live at PAX and do other things and, be interviewed about the show that we did. And it was one of those things of, there was never the intent to become a flagship show of all people of color,
Mhm.
but it wound up being something that showed others that they do belong in D&D, they do belong in the tabletop space. Because a lot of times we would do panels, we would do the show, and people would come up and talk to us saying, I didn't think that people like us,
No.
brown folks, played D&D, let alone did a show where WotC was paying for the show. And it just gave people something to realize that, yes, we belong too. And, sometimes when I talk about it, it gets super emotional, but there were just so many people that we'd met that had never seen anyone like them on a stream show. Just knowing that we had that impact without even that being the intent. The intent was to show off 5e because it was new and
Yeah.
show that anyone can learn to play with the new rules and things. So that's something I will always be proud of. And, I'm even more proud that even though we had to crowdfund to do it, we got to take the show out on our own terms.
No, I think all of that cannot be understated. I can only imagine what that did for the general audience to see. This is the show. This is the show of people like me, rather than, frankly, people like this. But the fact, happy accidents and inspired so many people. I mean, that's just wonderful.
Yep. And also, I'm sure that you are familiar with Three Black Halflings because they're UK based.
Hmm.
And, seeing Three Black Halflings do the same thing and being very loud and proud about, hey, we're all people of color and we're doing the thing, and they weren't inspired by Rivals or anything, but just knowing that they are still doing this, that they are out here doing all these cool things and seeing Jasper get to do so many cool things and Jeremy and Liv is it's heartwarming
Absolutely.
because it was also super emotional to end our show after 5 years. But we know that other people are still doing things, seeing Jasmine Bular, that bronze girl, doing all this stuff, especially it's Black History Month in the US as we're chatting. So it makes me very, very happy to know that folks are continuing on and doing things and intentionally going, hey, we're here. Don't ignore the fact that the brown and black folks are doing D&D.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Finally, if you could frequent any fictional bar or restaurant, where would you want everybody to know your name?
I know what I'm thinking of. I'm trying to remember. It's the movie has Simon Pegg, and I know that I visited the place one time. It's a bar in this movie, and I cannot remember the name of it. But otherwise, I'll say Cheers, but I've actually been to Cheers because I go to Boston for PAX East.
Oh, nice.
So to keep with the theme of where everyone knows your name, I would go to Cheers, but I would like it to be on the show because it's actually a much smaller bar than you'd expect from what you saw on TV. It looks massive. It's not that big of a place, actually. But actual place that I've been to would be Cheers.
Very nice. Well, thank you so much for your time. If folks have enjoyed these insights into the brain of Cypher of Tyr, where can they find you on the internet?
I am Cypher of Tyr everywhere because yay branding. That is CYPHEROFTYR, like the god Tyr. That is everywhere. Twitch, YouTube, no longer Twitter. I got off that evil site. Find me on Blue Sky mainly, Instagram, TikTok. And if you fancy some shenanigans on stream, I usually stream UK friendly morning hours because I don't sleep very often. So I'm usually up when it's afternoon for you all.
Okay, well, thank you out there for watching and or listening to this as well. I'm DC Bradshaw, and this has been Short Thoughts with Cypher of Tyr. Hope you have an amazing day. Take care.